In today's video, I want to take you deep into a story from my own life. One that began in a quiet town, inside what seemed like a safe, ordinary home, but ended with me uncovering something I never should have seen. My name is Emma Dawson, and I'm 23 years old. Most people at my age are living in their own apartments, maybe with roommates, chasing their dreams. But me? I ended up moving into my cousin's house. Not by choice, but by circumstance. I've always been focused on my career. Architecture is more than just my degree, it's my obsession. My days are filled with sketches, presentations, and freelance projects. I don't go out much, and I don't waste time. But life doesn't really ask what you want. It just happens. When my parents separated during my teenage years, everything turned upside down. We moved constantly, new towns, new schools, new neighbors. Just when I'd start to feel settled, we'd pack up again. Stability became something I craved but rarely had. Eventually, my mom landed a demanding job out of state. She couldn't take me with her right away, not while I was still in the middle of finishing my degree. I needed a place to stay. That's how I ended up in Glenwood, moving into my cousin David's home. David and his wife Lillian lived in a charming house at the edge of town. Quiet, surrounded by trees, far from the noise of the city. On the surface, it seemed like the perfect place to find peace. But as I would learn, appearances can be deceiving. David was always more than just a cousin. When I was a kid, he was like the big brother I never had. He taught me how to fix my bike, helped me with school projects, and even gave me my very first professional sketching set for my 18th birthday. He wasn't the kind of relative who disappeared for months and only sent the occasional card. He was present, always. Living with him, though, also meant living with Lillian. She was older than David, graceful, polished, almost intimidating. At first, I didn't know how to act around her. She had a distant, poised demeanor that made me feel like an intruder in their home. I stayed quiet, kept to myself, respected their space. But slowly the ice thawed. She'd offer me little bits of advice. How to cook certain dishes, how to manage time better, even small lifestyle tricks. Our relationship never became warm, exactly, but the tension eased. Life settled into a routine. Calm. Predictable. Normal. Or so I thought. At first, it was small things. Easy to dismiss. Doors I was sure I had closed would stand slightly open. Footsteps echoed in the hallway late at night, when both David and Lillian were supposed to be asleep. Lights flickered, faint whispers carried through the walls. Sounds too deliberate to be just an old house. And then there were the moments with David. I'd find him awake in the middle of the night, sitting in the living room in complete silence, staring at nothing. If I asked if he was okay, he'd smile faintly and say he couldn't sleep. Lillian, too, had her odd habits. She'd vanish for entire evenings with vague explanations about conferences or errands, always returning with a distant look in her eyes. Something wasn't right in that house. I could feel it, like an invisible current pulling at me, whispering that there was more beneath the surface. One night, while I was sketching late into the evening, I heard footsteps again. This time, deliberate, slow, measured, coming from the hall outside my room. I froze listening. My pencil hovered above the page. The steps stopped. A door creaked open. Curiosity outweighed fear. I stepped into the hallway and followed the sound until I realized it was coming from David's room. I pushed the door open slightly. The moonlight spilled across his bed, and there he was, lying down but not peacefully sleeping. His face was twisted as though caught in a nightmare. His hand clutched something tightly against his chest. I leaned closer. It was a journal. My heart pounded. Should I wake him? Leave him? Before I could decide, his eyes fluttered open. "Emma," he whispered, voice thick with sleep. "What are you doing here?" Panic shot through me. I muttered something about hearing a noise and quickly left. But the image stayed with me. The way he clutched that journal, like it held something too important, or too dangerous, to let go. From that night on, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Everywhere David went, the journal followed. He carried it from room to room, never leaving it unattended for long. And then one evening, I got my chance. David had dozed off on the couch, the journal resting on the table beside him. My hands shook as I reached for it. The leather was aged, worn smooth from years of use. I flipped it open, and froze. Inside were detailed sketches of a house. Not their house. Not mine. A different house altogether. Floor plans, structural notes, hidden passages. Each page more elaborate than the last. But what sent chills down my spine were the scribbled notes in the margins. She doesn't know. Keep the door locked. Not safe if discovered. My chest tightened. Who didn't know? What door? I snapped the book shut, panic rising. Just as I placed it back, David stirred. His eyes opened slightly, locking on me. Emma, he said softly, almost too softly. You know you can always ask me, if something's on your mind. My breath caught. Did he know I had been reading? From then on, I couldn't ignore the signs. The journal. The whispers. The way Lillian always seemed to avoid the basement. Yes, the basement. Whenever I asked about it, she brushed me off. It's messy, she'd say. Nothing worth seeing. But her tone was too sharp, too quick. Like she wanted to keep me away at all costs. One afternoon, when both David and Lillian were out, I decided to look for myself. The basement door was locked, but the key hung from a hook in the kitchen. The moment I opened the door, a chill swept over me. The air was damp, metallic, carrying a faint mustiness. Dust clung to the furniture and boxes stacked high in uneven piles. But one thing stood out immediately. The far wall looked different. Newer than the rest. The paint was fresh, the structure cleaner, as though it had been rebuilt recently. And half hidden behind a shelf was a narrow, locked door. A door I recognized from the sketches in David's journal, that I didn't try to open it. My courage failed me. Just then, I heard a car pulling into the driveway. Heart racing, I scrambled upstairs and pretended to be studying when they walked in. But that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind filled with questions. What was behind that door? Why was it hidden? And why did David's notes say she doesn't know? The days that followed were unbearable. I couldn't concentrate on my architecture work. Every time I picked up my pencil, my mind drifted back to that basement door. The one hidden behind the shelf, locked tight, waiting. And then there was David. His behavior shifted. He watched me more closely now, as though he sensed my curiosity. He'd ask me strange questions. Did you sleep well? Did you hear anything last night? Have you been down to the basement? That last one nearly made me choke. I lied, of course, forcing a smile, saying I had no reason to go down there. But the way his eyes lingered on me told me he didn't believe me. Lillian, on the other hand, grew colder. She no longer offered her casual advice. Our conversations became clipped, polite, but stiff. It was as though she was keeping a wall between us, or hiding something of her own. One night, I woke to the sound of faint scraping. At first, I thought it was the wind. But when I listened closer, it was coming from beneath me, from the basement. My heart pounded. I crept out of bed, tiptoeing to the hallway, listening. The sound continued, metal against metal, slow and deliberate. Then silence. A door closed softly. I froze. Someone had been down there. At 3 a.m. I wanted to retreat back to bed, to convince myself it was nothing. But deep down I knew. The secret of that basement door wasn't just in my imagination. The next day, David left for work early, and Lillian claimed she had errands in town. For the first time in weeks, the house was mine. I didn't waste the opportunity. I searched David's study. At first, I found nothing but architectural blueprints and textbooks. But then, hidden behind a row of binders, I found another journal. My hands shook as I opened it. This one wasn't filled with floor plans. Instead, it contained notes. Short, fragmented, almost like warnings. The truth must stay hidden. She will ruin everything if she knows. The room is not safe anymore. My breath caught. Who were these words about? Me? Lillian? Someone else entirely? And then, one line near the back of the journal froze me in place. Never let Emma find the key. The words burned into my mind. Never let Emma find the key. Which meant there was a key. And if there was a key, that door in the basement wasn't just decoration. I tore through the study again, checking every drawer, every shelf. Nothing. My frustration built until I accidentally knocked a stack of papers off the desk. As I bent to gather them, I noticed something taped beneath the drawer. A small brass key. I stared at it, my pulse racing. This had to be it. The key to the hidden door. I slipped it into my pocket just as I heard the sound of the front door opening. David was home early. I barely had time to shove the journal back before he stepped into the room. His eyes scanned the space, then settled on me. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his tone casual. Too casual. I forced a laugh. "Just looking for some paper." He smiled faintly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. That night at dinner, the air was suffocating. Lillian barely spoke. David kept glancing at me, his gaze sharp, calculating. Every bite of food tasted like dust. Afterward, as I carried dishes into the kitchen, David followed me. He leaned against the counter, arms folded. "You've been restless lately," he said. "I hope you're not looking for things you shouldn't." The words sent chills down my spine. My hand gripped the edge of the sink. "I don't know what you mean," I muttered. He smiled again, slow and unsettling. "Of course you don't." And then he left, just like that. But I knew. He was warning me. He suspected. Which only meant one thing. I had to move quickly. The next night, both David and Lillian were out, a rare occurrence. I didn't know how long I had, but it was now or never. With the key clutched in my trembling hand, I crept down the basement steps. The air was colder this time, heavier, as if the house itself was warning me not to proceed. I pushed the shelf aside, revealing the narrow door. My breath quickened as I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a faint click. The door creaked open. Behind it was a narrow corridor, lit only by a weak bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were raw concrete, the air thick with dampness. At the end of the corridor was another door. I pushed it open slowly and gasped. Inside was a room unlike anything I expected. Not a storage space. Not an unfinished basement. A living space. A small bed neatly made. A table with half-burned candles. Stacks of books. Clothes folded in a corner. And on the walls, sketches. Dozens of them. The same house, drawn over and over, in different variations. But what made my blood run cold was the message scrawled across one wall in thick, dark ink. "She can never leave." My stomach turned. Who was she? Before I could process, I heard footsteps upstairs. Heavy, deliberate, heading toward the basement. Panic surged through me. I killed the light and pressed myself against the wall. Heart hammering. The basement door creaked open, footsteps descending. It was David. His silhouette filled the corridor, moving closer, step by step. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't notice the door ajar. But he did. He paused, then slowly pushed it open. His eyes scanned the room, landing on me instantly. For a long moment, we just stared at each other in the dim light. His expression was unreadable. Then he sighed. "I told you not to look, Emma," he said softly. "Now you know." I backed away, shaking. "What is this? Who lives here? What are you hiding?" David stepped forward, his face calm, almost gentle. "This isn't what you think," he said. "It's not dangerous. It's protection." "Protection from what?" I demanded. He hesitated. "From Lillian." The words hit me like a blow. "What are you talking about? She can't know about this room. She can't know what I've built. If she does, everything falls apart." I shook my head, my mind spinning. "Why would you write that I can never leave?" David's eyes darkened. "Because once you know the truth, you're part of it. And part of it means staying." Before I could respond, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Lillian was home. David's eyes widened. He grabbed my arm, pulling me close. "You have to choose, Emma," he whispered urgently. "Either you stay silent, or you'll never leave this house again." The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs. Lillian's voice called out, sharp and commanding. "David? What are you doing down there?" The last thing I remember was David's grip tightening, his eyes burning into mine. And in that moment, I realized I had stepped into something far darker than I ever imagined.